2021 is coming to a close. Let's take a look back at Team Xbox. 2021 is nearly over, and it's the perfect time of the year where we can look back and see how products and companies and the economies and global health have evolved during the year. And on this channel, we talk a lot about Xbox, and I think 2021 was a transformative year for not only the physical console, but also the brand, because we're starting to see Phil Spencer's plan finally land in the marketplace, and users are getting their hands on the vision that was laid out many years ago. And there's really a couple big pillars that we're going to be diving into here, but there really was a lot going on in the world of Xbox, and this is one of my favorite times to look and see, okay, Microsoft came into a plan for this fiscal year, or I should say calendar year, and let's see how it materialized. So first up, there's a couple things we need to talk about here. First off, the Xbox Series X and S have proven to be reliable next generation consoles. Now, that might seem like an obvious statement. They're reliable, they work. Well, if you've been around Team Xbox for long enough, you know that that's not always the case. There is obviously the red ring of death, and Microsoft has shipped many consoles since then, and they have been proven to be reliable. But a year has gone by, and we now know that these consoles, they don't have a high failure rate. I'm sure there are absolutely people who have issues with consoles, but they're definitely in the margins, not the majority by all means. And so the Xbox Series S and X have proven themselves this generation already. The Xbox Series X is what I currently use just about every single day, and it is silent, and it is powerful, and it has delivered on all the needs that Microsoft has promised for this type of a product. And you also have the Xbox Series S, which has proven to be the most affordable way to get into the next generation console gaming. Yes, it's not quite 4K, but the differences between the two consoles, I don't think there has been too much of an issue in educating the consumers. Yes, that is an expensive thing to do, is to educate the consumer on which console to buy. But as of right now, it looks like Microsoft has done a good job of defining the characteristics of both consoles, and they are appearing to be selling. Of course, it is still hard to get an Xbox Series X, but it does appear that the Series S has been much more readily available for this holiday season, and I suspect that's Microsoft putting more eggs in that basket because they know that price-sensitive consumers are likely to pick up a cheaper console, and that's why they have more Series S's available. All that being said, keep in mind that a lot of these decisions to stock up for consoles during the holiday season happened many, many months ago. This isn't something they made the decision in November. It's probably, honestly, June or May, and I wonder if they're actually still surprised at how the chip shortage impacted this holiday shopping season. Either way, the consoles have proven themselves this generation, and there's no questions or concerns about the quality of the devices. Now, on to the pillars that I really think establish Xbox, because Microsoft has been shipping consoles for years. This is nothing new, but this year we really saw a couple different tentacles of that strategy really get locked down. The first one is Game Pass. It is clear that Game Pass is here to stay. This is probably the biggest bet in Microsoft's gaming history, aside from honestly just building the first console. Like, this is their biggest bet that I have seen them make in a very long time. They are tossing significant amount of money at building out the pipeline of content for Xbox Game Pass. It is such a big deal that we're seeing competitors in the industry obviously starting to mimic it. We already know that Sony is going to be going down a similar path, likely to be announced in the spring. And you have other companies like Epic trying to figure out how are they going to fit into the same with like Ubisoft, where this new narrative of subscription is transforming the industry. Now, Xbox is obviously not the first to do this. We've seen it in other industries, like Spotify has done it in the music industry, and the list goes on and on. But this is the first tangible, large value company going at it aggressively in the gaming industry. And it's clear that Game Pass is not going away. And it also looks like it's going to be a pretty optimistic future if Microsoft continues the cadence that they're on. They're releasing big titles. These aren't things that come 6 months after their release. Like, these are day one releases on the service. The one thing we don't know about Game Pass right now is honestly how well it is doing. From an outside perspective, it appears to be doing well. Microsoft has not shared the usage numbers and the growth statistics related to the service, although I'm optimistic that we will hopefully see them in January. Now, the big question that is still out there related to Game Pass is, what is Microsoft's true cadence going to be, right? We know that they have to continue to line up big name titles, and they did an excellent job in the second half of this year. But how are they going to do that going into the years ahead, right? Okay, they've got 1 year behind, but we all know the sort of drive that gamers have. We've seen it with like Netflix. Like, if you're not adding new content all the time, then you're going to lose subscribers. Microsoft needs the subscribers paying every single month to justify the expenses, and so they have to keep dropping dropping big titles, or at least titles that are going to attract people. They don't all have to be all quad A or triple A. You're right. You can get some platformers in there, some side scrollers, and things that kind of fill it out. Not everything has to be a Psychonauts 2 as an example, but we need to understand, where is Microsoft heading with this cadence? Are they going to try to do monthly drops of big games? Are they going to try to do it on a quarterly basis? We don't quite know yet what their true cadence is. We know there's a lot of big titles coming in 2022. The biggest one I'm looking forward to is Starfield, and that's a pretty obvious one. I know a lot of people are looking forward to it, but that is by far the top of my list. But you can't just drop one game in the update cycle for 2022 to keep Game Pass lucrative. We know that there's other titles coming, but how are they gonna do this? Typically, like the January-February timeline's a little bit more quiet. Is Microsoft gonna continue to load up the second half like they did this year, where that July through December was dropping new content very, very frequently? In the first half of the year, while not a barren desert, was not in anything comparable to like what we saw in the second half. That is one of the big questions that I have going into 2022, is establishing that cadence. Now, on to the other, or I should say another tentacle of the the Xbox game world, if you will, is that Microsoft has very clearly established themselves that this year they are capable of producing multiple AAA game titles or quad A game titles and releasing them in a tight time frame. Now, Halo Infinite is the obvious one outlier because it was supposed to come out last year, but they ended up shipping it this year, and honestly, I think it worked out just fine for them. One, we got a better game, like hands down. I don't even know what they would have shipped last year. I don't even want to think about that. And it's not like it would have sold more consoles. Microsoft couldn't get any more consoles on the store shelves. They're still having that issue. But what they proved this year is that with things like Flight Sim, a lot of people slept on this and they forget about that Flight Sim is on the console. That was a huge technical uplift, and it's now available on a console. That is a big, big deal. It's an iconic simulator brought to the console. Things that we really hadn't seen, pulling all of Microsoft's probably like the best of their technology. You've got like your data streaming from the cloud and their Xbox console. And it was a really technical achievement, and that came out this year. We also had Psychonauts 2, a classic title, sort of an action humor style game. We obviously then have Forza Horizon 5, which has probably been one of the best, if not the best games ever released from the Xbox Game Studio. It is a fantastic title. I put it right up there. I honestly think it's better than Halo Infinite, personally, just from a polished perspective. And I know there's going to be people saying, but it crashed for me. But like from a gameplay and not a typical FPS perspective, I think Forza Horizon 5 is one of the best games Microsoft has produced ever. Now, we can't forget about Age of Empires 4 and obviously Halo Infinite. These are all games that were in simultaneous development that Microsoft was able to keep pushing them forward and getting them delivered roughly on time. Now, some of them went way over budget, and developing these games is increasingly complex and difficult, and hitting timelines, especially during 2020 and 2021, is exceedingly difficult. But what Microsoft was able to do is prove, regardless of timelines, is that they are capable of driving the ship that is capable of producing top tier games. I mean, go look at all the Metacritics, like the lowest one was in the upper 80s and everything else was scaling above that. So Microsoft knows how to get it done. Not every gaming company can do that on the planet, and Microsoft has established that they didn't do it just once, but multiple times in the same year is a really big deal, because that gives you a better confidence rating that things like Starfield are going to be great games, and that future titles that get announced that are coming out of Xbox Game Studios are going to be great games. Look at the other titles that launched this year that kind of fell by the wayside. Call of Duty Vanguard, I know it still sold a bunch, but I play a ton of Call of Duty, and it is arguably the worst Call of Duty that has been released in a very long time. I'm very turned off by Vanguard and some of the things that they have done there. Also, look at Battlefield. Battlefield was very rough around the edges, and then you have Halo Infinite coming in, while yes, technically delayed a year, was highly polished. Look at Forza Horizon 5, highly polished and delivered. And so that is my point, is that they are capable of delivering these games when the timing is right and doing it in a way that proves that Xbox can produce these types of titles. And the third major component that Microsoft shipped in 2020 or 2021, that established them as going forward into 2022 with momentum is xCloud, or cloud gaming. Microsoft made it a reality that you can play your titles on anywhere and just about on any device. Now, I played all the way through the Infinite campaign, and I played that thing on 3 different devices. I primarily played it on my console. I tried it out on my phone just a little bit just to see how it was. And I also played it on my PC, and it just picks up and goes. Like, I think people really take for granted this cloud save native capability where you can just save it on your console, go to another device, instantly jump right back into where you were and continue playing. That is a really big deal. And most people, because it's just tossed in there, it's not like a Stadia where it's a standalone SKU, don't really think about how incredible this actually is, that Microsoft just says, hey, it's just part of Game Pass, just Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, go play wherever the heck you want on any device. That is a really big deal, and Microsoft shipped that technology as a product in 2021. Now, someone's going to say, well, it's not a product because it's not standalone like Stadia, but it's a part, it's a checkbox on an item, and it is technically, I believe, a SKU. Inside the world of Microsoft. Either way you look at it, the fact that it's now available on every device and you can get it just about anywhere, despite Apple's best efforts to keep it off of iOS, Microsoft was able to deliver that in the past year. It really rounds out the experience if you think about it, how Microsoft performed in 2021. They delivered quad A, title A, whatever you want to call them, top tier games. They delivered multiple of them. They delivered gaming basically on any type of device, console quality gaming on your PC or on your phone or anywhere else. They've also proven that they've delivered reliable consoles, so that's no longer a question. And they've also been able to make Game Pass a thing and a threat to the industry that is outside the world of Xbox. And they also produced a mini fridge. I mean, look at this thing. It's a mini fridge. If you thought that was the console, joke's on you. That's the mini fridge. So anyways, when I just like to always take a look back at how things performed, and I always take notes. I'm a massive note taker, and I always look at my notes from going into 2021. What was I expecting Microsoft to do? And so the questions that I had were quite literally was, can cloud gaming actually be compelling on devices that aren't just a console? And I think the answer is yes. While they're not perfect, they are quite good and definitely tangible, and a point that you can emphasize and say, look, I can just go play this on my PC upstairs instead of sitting down on the TV in the living room and, let your spouse or your child or whoever have that device. And so the other ones were, what happens with Game Pass? And I think the question is still a little bit out on Game Pass. Obviously, they nailed it from a content perspective. Obviously, they nailed it from an experience perspective. We don't know the numbers that actually say, did it drive growth? Because growth is the ultimate indicator of success for the service. While Phil Spencer has said it is sustainable and profitable, two wildly different things. And so those are the questions there. And then I also said, hey, are the consoles, are they good? Are like the consoles like manufactured quality? Is there any issues? And I think they really hit on a lot of that stuff. So that brings the question of, what am I looking for in 2022? Well, we're looking for how Microsoft is going to now navigate the Game Pass waters, right? That's going to be an ongoing perpetual question because Microsoft has to continue to deliver content. They have some big acquisitions delivering titles, right? They made the Bethesda acquisition, which, at this point will become like 2 or 3 years old during this next year. And so Bethesda, are they delivering on the acquisition promises? Starfield being a key point for that. There's other things that are floating out there, but looking at previous acquisitions, because again, those things take time to materialize. Did they live up to the hype, or did they live up to basically the capabilities that Microsoft promised when they paid $7 billion for them? And so the acquisitions, Game Pass, and does hardware stabilize? And then hardware stabilizing meaning more so just supply. Right now, it looks like it might stabilize some, but right now it's still not easily, you can't readily available walk into a Best Buy and grab an Xbox, either the S or the X, off of a shelf. I've gone to my local Best Buy several times and they continue to not be there, but they do pop up frequently online. And so those are some of the big questions. I'm sure I've got more once I sort of wrap out the end of the year. But that is just my personal perspective of looking back at how Xbox sort of navigated the waters of 2021. I think they have a significant amount of momentum. I think it is primarily driven by Game Pass, and their high quality titles are really what's going to help push Microsoft through 2022. The question becomes, can they continue to execute? Can they avoid pushing out games that tarnish the Xbox Game Studio? Because right now I feel like they're riding on a pretty good high of releasing quality titles. And can they continue to deliver the experiences that customers demand? I don't even think expect anymore. I think demand that high fidelity gaming, that high fidelity online experience. And so that is what I'll be looking forward to in 2022, which means that you should keep it subscribed here, because the only BS on this channel is me.